There are these invisible rules that kind of shape our entire world. They're so deeply baked into our society that most of the time, we don't even see them. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful ones. We're going to talk about heterosexism.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we're going to define what this invisible system even is. Then we'll get really clear on the difference between heterosexism and homophobia, because they are not the same thing. We'll look at the huge impact it has on queer people, and then, maybe surprisingly, the hidden harm it causes for straight people too. And finally, we'll talk about how we can start moving toward a better world for everyone.
All right, so let's dig in. What exactly is this invisible system? Well, probably the best way to think about it is like a computer's default settings. All those preset options that just run in the background unless you go in and actively change them.
So what if our society works the same way? What if it has an invisible default setting for how we think about human relationships and identity? It's kind of like the water that a fish swims in. It's absolutely everywhere, so pervasive that it's almost impossible to even notice it's there. But that doesn't mean it isn't having a huge effect on everything.
And that system has a name, heterosexism. Now, the most important word on this slide, the one I really want you to focus on, is system. This isn't just about one person's opinion or belief. No, this is a structure that's woven into our laws, our media, our schools, and our everyday assumptions. It's a system that treats being straight as the standard, the default, the normal way to be, often without anyone having to say a single word.
Okay, so this brings us to a really critical distinction that trips a lot of people up. We have to separate the system of heterosexism from the personal prejudice of homophobia. They're definitely related, but they are not the same thing at all.
This slide does a great job of breaking it down. See, heterosexism is systemic, and it often works implicitly. Sometimes it's completely unintentional. Think about filling out a form that only gives you the options for husband or wife. No one's yelling at you, but that form completely erases the reality of same-sex couples. Now, homophobia, on the other hand, is personal and explicit. It's intentional. It's someone shouting a slur at a couple on the street. One harms people by making them invisible, the other harms them through open hostility.
So, what does it all mean? What are the real-world consequences of living inside this invisible system? Well, for people in the LGBTQ+ community, the effects are incredibly deep, and they touch almost every part of their lives. And it's not just one thing, it's like a chain reaction. It often starts with that constant feeling of being erased, of being invisible in society's main story. And that feeling, it leads to serious mental and physical health problems. It fuels discrimination, and it can create this profound sense of social isolation. And here's the really scary part. This system of just ignoring or devaluing people, it creates an environment where actual violence can seem more acceptable.
And if you need to see a concrete example, just look at this. The data on mental health is frankly staggering. According to the American Psychological Association, LGBTQ+ youth are 2 to 3 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts than their straight peers. And that's not some random fluke. It's a direct result of growing up in a world that is constantly sending you messages, big and small, that the way you are is different, that it's not the default.
And the connection to violence is just as direct. When an entire system devalues a group of people, it kind of gives permission for hostility to grow. FBI data from 2023 shows that more than 1 out of every 5 reported hate crimes was driven by bias against someone's sexual orientation. The systemic problem of heterosexism fertilizes the soil where the explicit hate of homophobia can take root. But here's where the story takes a turn you might not expect. The effects of this system don't just stop with the queer community. Now, don't get me wrong, heterosexism absolutely privileges straight people, but it also traps them in these rigid boxes, putting limits on everyone, whether they realize it or not.
Here's the heart of the issue. Heterosexism reinforces these incredibly narrow, rigid roles for gender and relationships. It basically hands everyone a script for how men are supposed to be and how women are supposed to be, and that limits everyone's freedom to just be their authentic selves.
Just think about it for a second. Men feel this pressure to be tough, to never show emotion. Women are expected to be the nurturing ones. If you choose to be single or not have kids, you might get looks or questions. And what about deep, emotionally close friendships, especially between straight guys? They can get viewed with suspicion. It builds walls, not just around queer people, but between straight people too.
Okay, so seeing the system and understanding the harm it causes, that's the crucial first step. But where do we go from here? How do we get from just being aware to actually taking action? Well, it means changing the system on a whole bunch of different levels.
Yeah, there's no single magic solution here. It has to be this multi-pronged approach. We absolutely need education that shows diversity is normal. We need to change policies to make sure everyone is protected equally. We need to see more real, authentic representation in our movies and TV shows. And, maybe most importantly, we need active allyship.
And this is where individual actions become so incredibly powerful. See, allyship isn't just about passively agreeing that things should be better. It's the active process of challenging those old default settings. It's questioning assumptions, like automatically assuming a new coworker's partner is of the opposite sex. It's speaking up when you hear a homophobic joke. It's about helping to rewrite society's code, one conversation at a time.
And that really leaves us with the final thought to take with you. Making the invisible visible. That's the work all of us can do. And it can start with a really simple personal question. What is one assumption about gender, about relationships, about family that you can challenge even just in your own mind today?